Well, it looks like a former head coach in the NFL is going to, or maybe be joining the Philadelphia Eagles defensive staff alongside Vic Fangio. We're going to be talking about N'Kobe Dean, a little bit of update with him, and Dallas Goedert, his contract, and the future at tight end doesn't look too great right now because of how this past year we haven't really produced a number two, and a lot more going into Dallas Goddard. And the replacement is going to have to come sooner or later, depending on what they do. So let's get into all the news.
Because I've seen enough horror movies to know any weirdo wearing a mask is never friendly.
Yo, what's going on, guys? I hope everyone's having a fantastic day today. So I'm going to go over some news in the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, Vic Fangio has been hiring his own staff. Some guys that have never been involved with him, but high experience type of coaches for some of these positional openings that are available. And one, Brandon Staley. And yes, Staley could be coming to the Philadelphia Eagles as a defensive assistant next to Vic Fangio. Now, Brandon Staley was the linebacker coach for the Chicago Bears when Vic Fangio was the defensive coordinator. Vic Fangio got the head coaching job to the Denver Broncos. Staley goes to Denver for a couple years, or a year, I forgot, and then goes to the Rams for as DC for 1 year, and then go straight to the LA Chargers for the head coaching job. And obviously things didn't really pan out the last, few years with Brandon Staley at the helm of the LA Chargers. Now, bringing in a guy like this that's had a lot of experience, especially since we've been missing out, on some positional coaches when it came to the linebacker coaching. Bobby King, I think, is a really good hire, but I think Brandon Staley will kind of look over everything with this defense, help Vic Fangio out a lot, and give his insight, which isn't a bad thing, really. As a linebacker coach to a defensive coordinator hasn't really been horrible, but his last couple years haven't really been that great. Kind of took over play calling for some other matters as well when it came to the Chargers, and that's why they brought Kellen Moore in last year, and that was really Brandon Staley's last leg to stand on last year, or this past year, I should say, where he ended up getting fired, let go, you name it. That's what happened. So now Brandon Staley is, looking for a job, I guess, and Vic Fangio has an opening for him to be a defensive assistant. What he's going to be helping with, I don't know entirely, but I guess as an assistant, he could have a lot of say, or not really say, but at least help with how to utilize the linebackers. And I think getting top tier talent at that position is really going to help. So Brandon Staley is a big name out there, at least for an assistant job under Vic Fangio, and don't think it would be bad at all. Like, they're adding a lot of, not only your outside parts, that coordinator are looking pretty good right now defensively with Vic Fangio, but these little intermediate pieces that he's filling in with guys that he's been successful with in the past, and with guys that have a ton of experience, that have had past success elsewhere, not even involved with Vic Fangio whatsoever. So I think there's a lot of good moving pieces around. We're gonna have to see how this whole thing unfolds, how they attack this roster with the Philadelphia Eagles, who they will get rid of, who's trade bait, who can get cut, who can get released, who can get traded. I don't know. I mean, we went over our own roster and a lot of videos with certain specific players on this team that, some guys are cap casualties, and some at this point are not going to fit the scheme that Vic Fangio is running. So I'm kind of a little optimistic on what they're going to be doing, and who they're going to be bringing in, and who they're going to replace certain players that are just not going to play here anymore. And I think this defense is going to change entirely personnel wise, going into this year, this off season, between free agency, the draft. I think the defense is, obviously money is going to be more spent on this defense this year than the offense. The offense is almost really set without a running back, without maybe some backup depth depth that's right there. We'll get into the tight ends later in this video, but I think Brandon Staley would be a good hire. Anybody that Vic Fangio is close to and has had success with in the past, and he has brought him with him, after getting the head coaching job to Denver, coming from Chicago. So there's some good signs there. You know what I mean? So we'll see what happens with this little rumor that's going on, and we'll see what happens. So that's the news on that. Now, it looks like Brian Johnson has gotten a job as an offensive assistant with the Washington Commanders with Dan Quinn as the head coach. And man, our Eagle fans going to be pissed off if the Commanders beat us with Brian Johnson as the offensive assistant there. It's really gonna really just piss us off so much. So he finally got a job. Didn't get a coordinator job, and a lot of Eagle fans thought that he was going to come back as an offensive assistant to Kellen Moore or something like that to help with a position group or something. But nope, that did not happen. He is moving on to the Washington Commanders. Is going to know a lot about our roster offensively, the strengths and weaknesses of a lot of when coaches move within the division, it sucks. How much control does he have? Probably not too much, just because at this point, Cliff Kingsbury's going to take over that offense, and they're going to draft their quarterback at 4th overall. And, I don't know how much say Brian Johnson's going to have over there, but, he knows this team, he knows us, and he knows our players. So I think that will affect us definitely. And, I think the Eagles, like I said, the offensive philosophy has to change. The passing game has got to get going. And I know that Kellen Moore doesn't like to run the football. I know the run-pass ratio isn't that great. But the passing game needs to be fixed first before anything. And utilizing your receivers middle of the field, and stop with your 70 yards down the field on third and short, second and short. Your bubble screens, your stupid, let's make Devontae Smith go out and block on a screen pass. I mean, really stupid decisions. And you're going to get Jalen Hurts and his speed back this year, coming off a knee injury that really hindered him the whole entire year, forced him in the pocket, and the Eagles just really had Nick Sirianni really had no answer, no adjustments throughout the whole entire year, not one dominating performance. So with Brian Johnson going there to the enemy, now he is the enemy now. And, he had a lot of interest going to this offseason because everybody around the league knows who was calling the plays for the Philadelphia Eagles. Even though Brian Johnson's holding the clipboard, this is Nick's game plan at the end of the day. So a lot of things need to change. And, Brian Johnson is now with the Commanders. And as just an assistant, like I said, not going to have full control over anything, but he's there and knows this team pretty well. So got to face Washington twice a year. So we'll see what happens with that. Now, just for a little bit of news here, the offensive line assistant for the Philadelphia Eagles, Roy Istvan, is joining the Browns offensive line coach in Cleveland. So he's gone, and I don't really care about this too much. As long as Jeff Stoutland's in the building, he'll hire the right guys around him, and Jeff Stoutland is still here, so doesn't really matter to me whatsoever what offensive line assistants to Jeff Stoutland are gone, because at the end of the day, when Howie leaves Jeff Stoutland to all these decisions when it comes to trenches, offensive line, who they draft, if they're going to go for somebody there. And Jason Kelsey had a little bit of a collaborative effort when getting, Juergens in the draft, some, working together and doing some things. So, so Eagles lose another coach. Eagles have lost a lot of assistants. A lot of guys have left so far, but we'll see what happens. I think all we really have now besides assistant coaching is really wide receiver coach at this point. I think that's really the only positional coach that we have kept so far. And I don't know if he's moving anywhere. So, we'll see down the road what happens. But most likely we're almost set. Probably got to hire a few assistants, get a wide receiver coach if they're not keeping Aaron Moorhead, and we'll see what happens with that. Now, Dallas Goedert, this is a tricky situation here. Dallas Goedert's already 28 years old. I mean, time flies by. I mean, Dallas Goedert 28 already. I felt like we just drafted him the other day. Okay, so is on contract, I think, throughout the 2025 season. 2026 is a voided year, so he should be a free agent by 2026. So by the time he's 30 years old, past 30, he'll be a free agent by that time. The Eagles need a number 2 tight end. The Eagles need probably the future. And it wouldn't shock me if drafting a tight end high would be on the list. Now you're not going to go after someone like Bowers or something like that because you're not getting somebody like that in the top, 15 that he could probably go. But at this point, you traded for Albert O. You did nothing with him. You traded for Albert O from Denver, and I thought it was a really good trade. And he had a few catches this year. I mean, barely had opportunity. Jack Stahl's a free agent. He had 5 catches for 30-something yards. I mean, they barely used him. They like him because of his blocking. They don't really use him for anything else. And Grant Calcaterra is more injury prone than I can ever imagine as of right now. So the Eagles never just tried to get another tight end involved. Nevertheless, never got Dallas Goedert really involved this year. Not just him, but the whole freaking roster offensively. Who really got involved besides, AJ Brown having some big games, Devontae Smith having a nice second half of the season, and underutilizing the running backs and substitutions and situational football, and Hurts just having a regressing year. There's something to think about here because Dallas Goedert, unfortunately, this past year wasn't his fault. Cowboys player broke his forearm. I get it. It happens. But we all have to say to ourselves, Dallas Goedert's going to be out like 4 to 5 games every year because something always happens to him every single year. And then the Eagles totally just don't involve another tight end. So the Eagles kept 4 tight ends on the roster this past year coming off of of training camp into the regular season 4. And I was kind of shocked over that. Not only 4 running backs, but 4 tight ends, 7, 8 cornerbacks. I mean, it was kind of crazy. And they really have to start producing a number 2. Somebody, I don't know. I mean, I know people were talking about Dalton Schultz coming here, Kellen Moore will get Dalton Schultz. He's a free agent, but yeah, they could, maybe. I don't know how much is he going to cost. Not really sure. So now the Eagles will start, Kellen Moore will start getting some of his old players he was successful with when he was in Dallas or something like that. But something has to be done here. I mean, you might have to go in this draft and go get a freak athlete at, with one of those second round picks. I don't know, but something has to be done because, like I said, Dallas Goedert is not an entire liability. He's not as bad as Avonte Maddox, but it's getting to that point where every year, he's 28 now. Okay, $9 million cap hit. He's affordable. There's nothing wrong with the numbers or anything like that. Going into his last year is like 21 million when the Eagles are not going to get hit with that and the dead cap whatsoever or the cap number in general. But there's just opportunity that's just missed with the tight ends, and Kellen Moore, especially within his offensive scheme, loves using tight ends. And I think Dallas Goedert should have a fantastic year next year for the Philadelphia Eagles in 2024. So like I said, a lot of decisions have to be made here, and they need to find somebody that's going to be runner up. If the Eagles don't want to pay Dallas Goedert, after, this year and next year, he becomes a free agent. They got to find their next guy. And, time flies by. Dallas Goedert, I think, still has a lot left in the tank. I don't think he's slowing down. I just think the injuries are we can't compensate for him being out. And that's, Jack Stahl is more of a blocking tight end. Calcaterra is always hurt, but he's more of a little bit of a speedy tight end, but, gets opportunity. But the thing is, a lot of these tight ends that we have, Jack Stahl, Calcaterra, they've had starting experience, which is great. They've played the last few years. They've had the starting experience, which is good. But when it comes to Albert O, which I think he's a freak of nature, and I think he's got the acrobatic catches, he gets separation. They never really gave him a chance. So you traded a late round pick. It wasn't a big deal, but you got nothing out of it. Like, you never even tried to put him on the field. They may have tried a couple times. I know he barely even had 5 catches this year. So, even when Dallas Goedert was out, they just ignored the position. You can't just ignore a position when somebody's out. I mean, that's just what it is. So is that more on Howie? Is that more on Nick and the substitutions? Like, that's who makes decisions of who dresses for these games? Who makes the decision that Rashad Penny's not going to dress or not going to get any carries? Or, that's what I've always tried to figure out. Is it Howie with the last word? All right, checks the active roster, for game day and says, you know what, let's take him out, let's put him in. And Albert O is a healthy scratch for. I don't know why you trade for a player and barely do anything, and definitely don't use him. You don't even use him in the offseason. Don't even use him during even the preseason games. You have bad looks all over the place. So the tight end position is going to have to be replaced within a couple years. And if Dallas Goedert has a big year this year, I hope he does. And I think Kellen Moore really likes him. And to get a free agent tight end to back him up in case, Goddard, goes down, or if they want to use double tight end sets. And I know Kellen Moore has done that as well. But you got two number one receivers you have to use, and no running backs besides Gainwell on this roster right now, and a top 3 offensive line with Kelsey most likely staying. A lot of good things to come out of it, but tight end is definitely a fix that needs to happen soon within after this year. It's got to get done. But they need to find a number 2 that they can rely on. I think that's the number one thing they have to look for. I want to go over, so Nakobe Dean, all right, so coming off of the injury, the boot is off. He was on his Instagram. He had this moving, that's why it looks blurry, because he was moving back and forth. It was like a GIF thing, whatever. So looks like the boot is off the foot, and he'll get back into doing what he does. And look, injuries aren't everybody's fault. It just happens. You either have luck with it or you don't, or you have good luck, bad luck, staying off in the injury report. But hurt 3 times, 2 times on IR. He missed valuable time in the offseason, no joint practice. He made the last preseason game, and that was pretty much it. And the Eagles went into the season saying, oh, well, Nakobe Dean, we have him, so who cares? That they went into, for a damn fact, they went to the last offseason and they said, oh, we got Nakobe Dean. That was the plan. They would sign some 1-year contracts around him, and they would be lights out. But that didn't happen. So not that Nakobe Dean played well anyway, but the system sucks too. So everybody didn't play well. It wasn't just him. So now gets another opportunity, but needs the availability. That's the number one thing, because it's already enough that we want to see what he could do. But if you're not even available to play, practice, get into a game on Sunday or prime time, there's really, thank God he was the 3rd round pick, because this would be more upsetting if he was a 2nd rounder or a late first or something like that. But I try to ignore if Nakobe Dean's on this team or not. I try to ignore the fact that he's even here. I kind of want to be surprised by him. I'm not putting too much hype into him this year because the linebacker spot is going to change. Nakobe Dean they have to give him competition. Do not make anybody comfortable on this roster. Make nobody comfortable, because once that happens, everything's taken for granted, and then they are allowing themselves to decline and play like garbage. And I don't want that to happen. I think we got to put as much in front of him as possible. This way he has to fight for it. His job is not safe either. They bring in 2-3 linebackers and he gets beat out. He gets beat up by a guy coming off of he's an undrafted free agent or something. That's probably not going to happen, but you never know. Guys decline. Injuries kind of ruin careers, and that's what happens. And you got hurt 3 times 3 times, not once, not twice, 3 times, and then you're out the rest of the year. So out of the walking boot, and here comes another season of Nakobe Dean, see what he could do. So I'm excited. I'm excited how different the linebacker spot is going to be with Vic Fangio in the building, and how he wants his linebackers to be athletic freaks of nature. Okay, you got to cover, you got to shoot the gap, you got to be aggressive, you got to be physical, you have to tackle well. That's what comes down to his linebackers. And unfortunately, yes, I get it. Nakobe Dean might be an undersized linebacker that's here, but they can use him in certain situations. And we'll see what happens. But Nakobe Dean coming back is a great sign. We'll give him a chance. We'll give him a shot. But I'm looking for a lot of changes in front of him that he's going to have to climb out of that hole. That wasn't his fault. But unfortunately, the Eagles have to make, huge change at that position, change the philosophy, and put more attention towards it, because I think that's what we need right now. But other than that, that's pretty much it. I mean, Brandon Staley to the Philadelphia Eagles, connections as a defensive assistant with, Vic Fangio as a linebacker coach, a head coach, a lot of opportunity there with him and Fangio being together. Brian Johnson to the Commanders, Dallas Goedert. Are we going to find our number two? Dallas Goedert's contract's up in a couple years, and after this year and next year, that's it. Got to find a number two. Got to find the future. Do they do it in the draft this year? Do they get a free agent? Like Dalton Schultz or something to go behind Dallas Goedert, or do they try different things? And we'll see what happens. But we're getting closer to free agency. March is coming. We're getting there, and we haven't even touched our own roster yet, but we'll see what happens. But I appreciate everybody watching the video. Make sure you subscribe to the channel for more Eagles news every single day, and definitely like the video. And I appreciate it so much, everybody. It's been watching and supporting. Love you all, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Shakes, what up, Falls Live. Peace out, guys. Peace.